Welcome to Photonics in Focus, the podcast where industry leaders and innovators share insights into the latest advancements in integrated photonics technology. Join us as we explore how this emerging technology is transforming industries and driving new possibilities, and how AIM Photonics is at the forefront of this revolution. Tune in to stay ahead of the curve in the rapidly evolving world of photonics.
Every career starts somewhere, but the transition from the classroom to the workplace is where learning takes on new meaning. Through internships, students gain experience, build confidence, and discover what it takes to succeed in a professional environment. Join us as Andrada Nicolai, Experiential Learning Coordinator at New York Creates, talks with this summer's AIM Photonics interns about the experiences, challenges, and lessons that are helping prepare them for a future in a high-tech world.
An internship isn't just about completing a project. It's about learning how an organization works, collaborating across disciplines, communicating technical ideas, solving unexpected problems, and seeing how high-tech products move from concept to manufacturing. I'm Andrada Nicolae, Experiential Learning Coordinator at New York Creates. My role is to connect talented students with internship opportunities that align with their interests and give them the chance to apply what they've learned, grow professionally, and gain the experience needed to succeed in today's high-tech world. Today, you'll hear firsthand from several students participating in the AIM Photonics Summer Internship Program as they share what they've learned, how their perspectives have evolved, and how the experience is helping them prepare for the future. First of all, I'd like to quickly introduce the interns who are joining us. We have here Tanvir Islam, who is recently graduated from Swarthmore College and is headed to Cornell University to start graduate school. His summer internship project at AIM Photonics involves building a Python script to help model and design ring modulators. Alison Beatty. She's a senior studying graphic design at SUNY New Paltz. Her summer internship has been spent with AIM Photonics marketing team, learning how to communicate complex technical topics through a variety of marketing and communication projects. We also have Kristen Graham, who is a PhD student at Georgia Institute of Technology, whose summer internship project at AIM Photonics involves working on improved fiber chip coupling and automation. And Kevin Reyes, he is a master's student at University at Albany, and his role at AIM Photonics is project intern, and he's working on bench test measurements. Welcome, everybody. Before we talk about what you learned, let's start at the beginning. You each came to the AIM Photonics internship program with your own interests, goals, and expectations. What drew you to this opportunity? And Tanvir, I'm going to start with you.
One of the big journeys I've had throughout college is learning about how to balance electrical engineering and physics. And I think when I was looking for job opportunities this summer in order to prepare for grad school, I was kind of looking for that balance between those two fields that really piqued my interest. And so while I was searching, I think the big thing that stuck out about AIM was, first of all, just the name AIM Photonics, which was pretty much exactly what I was interested in working at. And then after doing some digging, I realized that it's pretty much got what I was looking for, that sort of balance between like electrical engineering work and designing things, as well as the physical background to actually understand what it is that you're designing.
What about you, Kristen?
So I was really looking for a way to apply the skills that I had learned in my program to something. I wanted to know what I could do with my degree. And I started looking around in the fall, and I saw this opportunity, and I thought to myself, wow, this could be really interesting. I've never really worked for a company like this. I know basically nothing about fiber optics, although I have a background in classical and quantum optics. And so I applied, I got in, and I just really wanted to see what I could do.
What about you, Alisa? What drew you to this opportunity?
Yeah, I was just interested in working in a field like very different from anything I've been doing at school or in the past. I've done I worked in sports at school, and just I've never done anything very text heavy and technical. So I was just interested in doing something different.
And Kevin, I know that been with us for a while. Kevin started here as a co-op. What is that drew you to this opportunity, Kevin?
Yeah, so I started my co-op back in January, so I've been here for the past 6 months or so. What really drew me to this opportunity was I mean, the photonics aspect of it, I actually worked under a professor here on campus on optical measurements, and, it was a photonics physics lab that I worked in, and it really did draw my interest when I worked in there as an undergrad, that I wanted to continue this work even after school.
Some of you are here for internship programs. Kevin is here for, a co-op position. What did you expect that your internship to be like?
Yeah, I think when I first started talking to my supervisor, we kind of set expectations for what I'd be doing. And so in my case, that was primarily going to be coding using Python. I think what really stood out to me once I got started is just like how well it actually mapped what I learned in like physics coding to what I was doing practically here. Honestly, I think it was a lot more coding than I was expecting, which isn't a bad thing because I think in some sense it really helped me understand, just how important it is to like automate these kinds of things. And that's one of sort of the main goals I've learned as I've gotten here.
Yeah, so I think, in academia, there's this perception that any job outside of the academic world is going to be very rigid, and you're going to be doing things for your stakeholders, and like there's not going to be a lot of wiggle room in the project for you to have sort of creative control over what you're doing. What really surprised me when coming here was, yes, we have these defined goals, but there's a lot of creativity involved in how you solve the problems that you're presented with. And that was really like a nice surprise for me because I didn't really expect that.
What about you, Kevin?
So what surprised me about the internship here was how similar it was to my research as a graduate student and as an undergrad student. It was, we have a set goal, and they give us the necessary tools to achieve that goal, but it's up to us to kind of find our way and our solutions towards those goals.
I was going to say, like, similarly to Kristen, but in a completely different field. Like, I thought everything I was going to be doing was going to be very, like, regimented and rigid and, like, very brand guidelines and stuff. And I've actually been able to be very creative with a lot of the things I've produced.
I would like to shift from why you came to the internship to what you took away from it. One of the biggest benefits of an internship is the opportunity to learn things that simply can't be taught in a classroom. What skills or perspectives have you developed that aren't typically taught in class? Was there a moment when you realized you were learning something you couldn't have learned in a classroom?
I think having just finished undergrad, it's still very fresh in my mind what it's like to learn about simple models at first and a lot of approximations. And I think one of the big things that I've taken away from my work so far is that obviously you can't always make those same simplifications, but at the same time, they're still there if you're looking for them. I guess to give an example of what that might look like is in class when we learn about, say, like light waves, you might consider like one wavelength and, okay, I can say, this index stays the same. But then when I'm working, you have a whole spectrum, and so things aren't constant anymore, and you have to take that all into account. But the approximation skills we learned in school, that still very much applies in the work that I'm doing. There are certain problems where you don't have to necessarily have exactly every detail right, so long as you can get close enough to the answer to make it work.
Is there something you would like to add?
Yeah, I mean, someone who is currently a graduate student, I spend most of my time on research and teaching and not so much in the classroom anymore. But what I've really noticed from working here is that there's quite a difference in scope between an academic research lab and a research lab at a place like AIM, whose mission is to improve process development for photonics. It's really interesting to see just the amount of people and the amount of organization that it takes to pull off a project like this. And it really works very well. Everyone seems to get along pretty well. All these moving pieces have to get put together, but it's still fundamentally a research organization.
And I'm just looking at Kevin right now because Kevin has been here for 6 months. What is your opinion about this, Kevin?
One of the biggest things about, the biggest differences about, what you learn in the classroom versus, our skills and perspectives during our internship was that in the classroom, it's a lot different. We learned about certain concepts in class, certain methods of measurements, the different fundamental physics side of things. It's really huge to be able to apply the ability to learn during your internship and during the projects, because that's what really school's all about, is not just to teach you the concepts and to teach you the content, but also to give you the ability to learn so that when you encounter problems in the workplace, you're able to learn about how to solve them if you haven't learned it in the classroom.
Yeah, I guess the biggest difference for me, like working in design from school, would be like working in such a branded thing for so long and a branding that I didn't pick. Like all throughout school, it's whatever I want to do kind of. And this is very much like company based. So that's been cool to like work within someone else's guidelines.
What stood out to you most about that transition? And were there any particular challenges or surprises that you experienced?
Yeah, I think Kevin's point really like highlights this part about kind of the difference being in school, you're kind of researching how to solve problems, but at work, you're kind of have a problem that you're doing research on. I think that's, that kind of sums up what the big difference is. On top of that, it's that what we're doing here is like, it's being practically applied, like it's solving something that people want to actually solve. Whereas in school, it's more like, you're still learning like how to put things together and actually gaining that knowledge to kind of prepare you for this point. So I think that's what stood out the most, that, when you're working, you don't always have the answer on hand. Sometimes it can be kind of frustrating because in school, you're like, I can just look that up or find out what my next steps are. But it's very open-ended with like actual work, or that's been my experience so far.
Yeah. So, I mean, the weight of what you're doing in, the workplace obviously has a lot more weight than, what you're doing in your course projects, like these guys said here. But one key difference that I really appreciate about working in an internship versus working on course projects, and this is in terms of working with a team, is the professionalism. You find a lot more professionalism in the workplace, and especially here at Photonics. I've worked with some great people over there in the lab, and everybody's really friendly, and everybody's really understanding if like, oh, you're not getting something quite yet, but like you'll get there, and they're very supportive. So with that, very different experience than, working on a project with students you haven't really known, and you don't really know what their work ethics are like, and, how well you are to work with that group to complete a course project. It just feels a lot more comfortable knowing that, we've got people in the same space with the same goals and with the same mindset and working towards solving our problems and our research.
What was it like collaborating with experienced engineers and professionals? Did anything surprise you about how teams work together?
Yeah, I think one thing that definitely surprised me a little bit is even though like it's a professional environment, I wouldn't say that it's strict. One thing I've heard from some friends who worked with people who hold PhDs is that it can be kind of like stressful working with people because they have very high expectations that they like project onto you, and it can feel almost kind of hostile. But I think my experience so far has been great. I feel like everyone that I've talked to, like they have high expectations for sure, but I think they're set in a way that you can meet them, and they're absolutely there to like help you meet them.
And I really think one important skill as a manager is communication, right? The ability of communicating to your team, your ideas, the projects, the deadlines. Kristen, what about from your point of view? What was, like collaborating with engineers, with your supervisors, maybe with other teams?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with Tandra's point about collaboration. There's such a high level of collaboration across the entire organization. I was really shocked at our first group meeting where all of us interns had to present the work that we had done in the first week. I was expecting there to be, maybe 6 people, like the direct team of people that we reported to and our supervisor. But no, 20 people showed up to that meeting. I was shocked. I was mildly intimidated. I knew none of these people. I was presenting things that they all, I'm sure, were experts in. And they were all really polite and they asked good questions. And I was really shocked at how much of a stake everyone in the organization had in the success of us as interns and of all of the other engineers in just the organization as a whole.
Back to your point, you're saying that, of course, they are professionals, but I'm sure when they look at you as interns, they think, oh, that was me 20 years ago, right? Yeah. Or, that was me when I first started. So they understand 100% your perspective. And, that's why they're so great teachers as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with everyone. I felt like my ideas have been very heard and all my choices have been very supported, which has been super cool and definitely a little surprising.
Did anything about your projects or the way you approached it change as you learned more?
For sure. Yeah. When I was first starting on the ring modulator process and learning more about them, I think I started more so with just, okay, I need to figure out what I'm doing. So I'll take some data that we already have and sort of analyze what's going on, like build up that foundation. And I think once I got like the parameters that we already knew, that helped build that understanding enough to where I could turn it around and say, okay, now that I know what I'm looking for, can I go the other way and kind of like, design the device and match those parameters up? So I think to kind of summarize what it was like, it's almost similar to the transition between college to work, where first you're like learning about the problem itself and then going around and actually solving that problem or implementing ways to go about doing so.
Yeah, I mean, when I came in, my project is kind of twofold. I'm doing a lot of the same things that Kevin's doing, where we're taking benchtop measurements and presenting the results to the stakeholders. But I also have this other project, which is to automate this kind of movement stage for optical measurements. And that I thought was maybe going to be a little straightforward because it's, a piece of equipment that's been around for a long time. Lots of different people have worked on ways to automate this. But as I started to kind of dig into the project, I realized that there were a lot of ways to improve it that people had done, but then a lot of them were done maybe 20 years ago. And so there's a lot of space for improvements to be made and a lot of space for creativity to be applied in solving problems that you maybe think are already solved.
Yeah, so working at AIM Photonics first, it was kind of a jump for me because I didn't have a lot of experience in photonics. I did work in a photonics lab, but I feel like the project that I worked on in my undergrad was real different from, the benchtop measurements that I was doing for AIM. So a lot of the information actually that I was kind of approaching in the lab was very new to me. So I would be working on some kind of experiment and, I don't know some of the properties of the components that we're using. So I need to use the right fibers and, I need to use the correct wavelengths that I just didn't know I was supposed to be using. And you kind of find that out through the process. So I feel like a good majority of the information that I learned throughout this internship was new information that I had to keep learning and then applying to help continue my work.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, I personally lacked a lot of information on what photonics was, and I'm working on promoting end-to-end, which is just everything that AIM Photonics offers. And I've had to ask a lot about what packaging is and what it looks like, because I feel like without seeing it personally, it's been hard for me to visualize and talk about it. But every day I learn a little bit more, and it makes each project a little bit easier. So that's been cool.
Yeah, true. What did you learn about communicating technical concepts during your internship? I'm going to start with Ali.
Yeah, I learned pretty early on that a majority of AIM's audience knows a lot of these technical concepts and knows what we're talking about. So not going too far in depth on surface level things is good because it's overkill for them, but then also providing access and accessibility to people like me who maybe don't know is super important. And yeah, it's been definitely a learning curve, but cool.
What do you think, Tanvir?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, even if I'm working on coding and physics-y kind of things, there's absolutely a lot of stuff that I still yet to learn. So I think the primary thing I can think of is usually one-on-one meetings with my supervisor every week, where I'm kind of learning from how he goes about explaining things, how to communicate well. So I think kind of what Allison said is that a big part of it is if you're on the same page or not. When he's explaining something, he'll make sure to ask questions to be did you understand that part? And I think one thing that I'm learning is to be open about that. Then, no, that didn't really make a lot of sense. If you're trying to be on the same page as something and you just kind of agree with it and going through the motions, it doesn't really get you anywhere, because at the end of it, you're just going to be great, I didn't understand that. I'd say being open and very clear, making sure to ask questions both ways. I think it's very important that you both understand where you're at so you can actually move forward.
Kevin or Kristen, would you have anything else to add?
Yeah, well, Denver made a great point is that like asking questions is a huge factor in communication, specifically when one of your mentors is telling you how an experiment should be run and you kind of get the wrong idea of how it should run, and then you do all these measurements the wrong way. If someone were to ask questions about the experiment specifically or the measurements, then they would get it right the first time and not have to redo them over again. It's very important to clarify what you're going to be running and what you're going to be doing, not just go based off of what you think is going to happen.
Yeah.
Even though if there's any doubt, it's so much easier to just clarify and be able to communicate that with whoever you're working with.
Listening to all of you, you kind of had similar experiences while being here, and you all agree, that communication is key, and you're doing the best you can in order to get to the best outcome. And I know that for you, Allison, marketing isn't usually the first thing people think of when they hear integrated photonics. What has it been like for you learning how to translate technical topics into content?
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve for sure. I think with each project, I just work hard to make sure I'm using like the appropriate visuals and effective messaging that's going to resonate with the proper audience. Back to what we were all saying, like asking questions has been super helpful, and looking at like prior posts and stuff. And then I think the main thing that's been helpful for me is just thinking about what would be easy for me to digest. Like if I went onto AIM Photonics website for the first time and was trying to learn about it, what would I be able to understand, but also what would someone with a higher IQ maybe be able to understand? So it's been, definitely a curve, but it's been very cool and I've enjoyed it.
And I do hope, whatever skills you gain, you're going to take them with you. I actually believe that, an internship doesn't necessarily end when the summer is over. The experiences, the skills and connections you build often shape the next steps in your education and career. And, to that point, how has this experience influenced your career goals, Tanvir, for example?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I feel like coming into AIM Photonics, I knew generally speaking, I want to do photonics level work, but it's not super specific what that was yet for me. I think working with one specific device, just really trying to make sure I understand it, has sort of opened my eyes into kind of a low level design of designing one specific part, making sure you understand it well. And I think that's the kind of work that I'm interested in, really making sure that you get it. For my PhD, hopefully it'll be something similar. No matter what it is, I think it's the getting down to the nitty gritty of things is what I'm really interested in.
Well, what about you, Kristen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I even knew that facilities like this existed, like massive facilities where everyone's just working on research and development outside of maybe like government labs or research labs, or academic research labs. So this has really opened my eyes to the wealth of opportunities that are out there for people who have advanced degrees, but also I work every day with people who have associate's degrees and they love their jobs and they find so much meaning in what they're doing. And I think it's just wonderful, and I'm so excited to be part of this industry in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, so I feel like this experience specifically, influenced my career goals in terms of, the experience. I'm really hands-on, I like to find things out for myself. So gaining that experience throughout this internship really helps me towards the next step of my career goals, getting a job as an engineer somewhere and working in, like Kristen said, R&D facility like this perhaps, or maybe in just manufacturing in general. But the experience that I gain with each step and each job and whatever position that I feel like is another step in reaching the goal that I want to see myself at.
I think that this experience has given me peace of mind that I chose the right major. I really enjoy what I'm doing here. And I think, like Kristen said, there's so many opportunities. I would have never expected a design opportunity at a photonics facility. So it's really cool to know how many options there are out there.
Looking back to your first day, what advice would you give next year's interns?
I definitely agree that it goes by so fast. I think my major piece of advice is almost kind of paradoxical in the sense that, I would tell people like time, it goes both really quickly and really slowly at times. And I think the important part is knowing like how to make the most of both situations. You know, it's only 2 months to do like an entire intern project is like, it's a bit of a time crunch. But I feel like even still, there are days where you notice like it kind of like drags a little bit, if I'm being honest. But I think those days are usually the ones where I like really sit down and make sure like I'm reading through things carefully. And I think that's, you know, that's really a big part of it, making sure that you understand what's going on and take the time to set yourself up rather than just jumping in head first. Because, yeah, as soon as I start doing that, it's just really hard to make progress and kind of burns you out fast. But I think taking your time like as necessary, and then once you get the pacing down, you go from there. I'd say that's more or less what I wish I knew.
I don't even know if I remember my first day, but I guess one thing I would say is to be patient. It's they're not gonna give you a whole bunch of work all at once right on the first day, you know, and you're ready to work and you're ready to get started and everything, but it's still a process, you know, getting settled into a company and being able to learn the area, even learn where you fit in and how you're going to be approaching problems and everything. Also to make friends, you know, with the people we are working with. And it's a lot more of a comfortable environment when you know who you're working with and you know you can trust them.
I mean, as with any internship, ask questions. But I think the most important thing for me, at least, is be open to learning everything. Just when you get an opportunity, take it. When someone offers to take you into the clean room to show you how a machine works, you take that opportunity. When someone wants to talk to you about their work and it's maybe not specifically related to what you're doing, you say, yes, I would love to talk to you about your work. Because honestly, you really never know where your next opportunity is going to come from, but really you never know how things are connected until you learn.
Yeah, I think I agree. Just like willingness to learn and ask questions is huge and will get you far. I also think just being confident in what you do is huge. Don't like make yourself smaller than you are. Like being proud of what you have accomplished here, I think is good advice.
That's super important. It's like you're in that position because you deserve to be in that position.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're all going to become successful. And let's just imagine that what in the future now. When you look back on this internship of years from now, what do you think you'll remember?
Honestly, I feel like I'll remember people. It's been really delightful to work with the team that I'm working with Amit and with Faye, with Javery, with Kevin, with Tanvir, with Nika. They've all been really wonderful to work with, and it's really made me feel very confident that this is the right path for me, that the people that I'm working with will be good people, and that they'll all be hardworking, and that they'll want to do the work. And that's the most important thing to me, just to be excited every day about what I get to do.
Yeah, I really can't reiterate, like, you know, I'm going to remember this basically like my first major work experience, but more importantly that, you know, I was excited to come in every day. I kind of alluded to earlier how some days do kind of drag, but I never felt like it was dragging because I hated what I was doing. It was more so that I actually enjoyed it enough to where it's like I was frustrated I wasn't like able to understand it as much as I'd like to. But I think that's just a testament to, you know, a lot of the lessons that I'll take away. It's that when you really like doing something, you feel almost like frustrated that you don't like know enough about it yet. But I'm glad that I'm able to keep doing that and hopefully keep doing that in the future.
Yeah, like the main thing that comes to mind, like Kristen says, is the people. Is not just because they're very, you know, welcoming and they're very helpful, but also because I feel like they really believed in me, you know, and they gave me that chance to kind of prove that I could do the work for them, you know, and they gave me the opportunity to show what I can do in the lab and how I can grow within the research. I'll never forget, you know, the people that gave me that chance and the people that chose to believe.
I want to thank you all for sharing your experiences and insights. Listening to your stories is a great reminder that internships are about much more than gaining technical knowledge. They're an opportunity to build confidence, learn from experienced professionals, and discover how classroom learning translates into the real world. To this year's interns, congratulations on everything you've accomplished, and thank you for being part of the AIM Photonics team. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us for this episode of Photonics in Focus. We hope you'll join us again next time.